Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. Change is inevitable. This month in March is discovering what's next. We've talked to a couple guests today. You're just going to be I'm just going to be the one here today, sharing what we've learned, what may be helpful. Discovering what next is. It's a concept that I think all of us can relate to, whether you're thinking before COVID, after COVID, or even before that. You know, life has its seasons. William Arthur Ward says it this way: the adventure of life is to learn. The purpose of life is to grow. The nature of life is to change. Change is inevitable. How we navigate, how we respond, how we remember may be critical moving forward. Disclaimer: if you are in the United States and you're in crisis, 988 is a suicide crisis lifeline. It's available in the States, but I do encourage you, wherever you are, to find what is available, what is appropriate, what may help. C.S. Lewis writes in this quote. It says, "Getting over painful experiences is much like crossing monkey bars. You have to let go at some point in order to move forward." So we're talking about discovering what's next. Sometimes part of that is letting go. Feel that work in, and also my own experience. Some of the biggest steps forward was to let go of certain ideas. One of the most critical ones for me was understanding that not everyone will understand what I'm going through, and that's okay. Being self-aware of my context, of what's around, how I feel, my emotional state, may really dictate the lenses I see the situation be. If I am tired, if I'm struggling, if I have a bad day, I normally take time. I try to remind myself to step back. And if it's a long, drawn-out problem that has been in your life that you're dealing with for years, decades, as much as we like to wrap it all up in one go, maybe have a conversation with your family or friend, or you have that internal talk about what's just kind of readjusting, reframing the situation. Most times it will take several questions, or at least other questions. Several times you ask yourself, why is this happening to me? And as I said, change is inevitable, but change is an adjustment, not an abandonment of what didn't work. I feel the abandonment, like I'm a failure. It may have not worked out, but depending on how you respond, what you've learned, from my experience, none of it really is, quote unquote, you abandoning it. A lot of the greatest inventions had many failures till they found one that worked. And the idea is a lot of times we may get some insight. Even myself, I have to be careful, even though I may recognize of who I am today, what helps me today, that may and most likely will change. Veronica Togaleva says, to know yourself, you must sacrifice the illusion that you already do. The fact of the matter is, I may know certain triggering points. I may know some reinforce, or I guess, baser impulses of what I usually tend or trend to do because it's more convenient, more familiar. However, I may not know what is motivating me to be upset, struggle, pull myself, withdraw myself from those around me, or dive right in. The detachment, how I communicate with them, with my spouse, my friends, or the fact that I don't. All these factor in. So I think it's a constant asking why, who, what is going on, what do I feel, why am I feeling this way? A lot of times when people look at my podcast, at least the name, they're like, Revive Ministries. It is faith-based, and that's primarily from my own faith-based background. But however, when I did envision about the idea, though, just like knowing myself, the idea of Revive Ministry constantly kind of changed. I began in having events locally and bringing people in. I think the most basic model was that to talk about things that most people in church setting wouldn't want to. And I expanded much further outward. I don't, and the concept of it kind of models the idea of outreach ministry. Like, if I'm going to a country, I'm handing food to homeless, not necessarily my approach is to address the need. And the need I feel with Revive Ministry Podcast is primarily to be heard. What I say today, whatever guests say today or tomorrow, whatever, may be helpful. And I try to bring things that may be positive, but it isn't required. It's not a requirement of faith. However, I do try to lend to the whole hope aspect. But if you are a person of faith, and I say this just in case you're inquiring of whether this podcast is something like you could be a guest on, I would say yes. I would say yes, because most times the way I approach it is I want to hear your story. I remember the first segments of this podcast, not to get off topic, was my story of recovery. I had many guests come in and share what they were struggling with. However, now I found it more effective with a monthly theme going back to discovering what was next. Revive Ministries, as I move forward away from local events, especially due to many factors, primarily being COVID, I had to adjust. I had to discover what may be next. But just like Veronica said, I don't really truly know. Just as I am not static, so is the podcast or whatever you're, I guess, diving yourself into. And I feel, at least from my experience, as the illustration of this podcast, it has been helpful to remind myself of how much I don't know of what's next. However, stepping forward I guess I do just like how I try to do with myself. I do it with my podcast or whatever I am doing or connecting. I reassess, readjust. And, going back to the focal point of this podcast is really just outreach. And I remember, and with that, and thinking of outreach, there's a verse in the Bible. I mentioned this with my other guests. It's in Proverbs 19, verse 2. It says, "Desire without knowledge is not good, and whoever makes haste with his feet misses his way." I think this is wise counsel for anyone, whether they're faith-based or not. The level of urgency usually dictates the red flag for me. And not to say I want to drag my feet when I do decide to move forward, decide to discover what may be next. But take time to learn what you actually want to do. Why do you do what you do? Sometimes those questions, at least from maybe more unpacking than you'll like. And that, like I said earlier in this podcast, I like to kind of, finish everything, be done with it in one setting. But whether it's a conversation with a loved one that you guys are at odds, or a spouse, or whether it's just some habit of yours or something that you're struggling with seeing past, or you're just struggling, it may take a bit of time. But I do encourage you, just like this verse, just like understand the idea that we are constantly learning, we are constantly understanding and adjusting. I think promotes a more active role in this discovering what's next. Mark Twain, segueing for what's next. Sometimes that road to what's next, and even if you are surrounded by supportive family members or loved ones, it can be a lonely one. So I think one thing I had to address in my personal life is being comfortable with who I am. And there's definitely a lot of things I remember that I had a lot of shame of not still being. I was arguably a lot healthier. I felt I had more ahead of me at a young age, and then when I was struggling for quite some time, this quote would be hard. I could go ahead and help in my church and the ministry. I could help in the community with mental health. I could do whatever it is, as long as I don't see myself in the mirror. And for this, I think I think the uncomfortableness of myself made the solitude, the loneliness at that time overwhelming. And it did impact what I thought was capable for what is next. Just like Veronica, another way I've kind of understood is unfinished. Our lives are constantly in a state of unfinished. You may finish certain milestones, but we are constantly, just like life is constantly moving forward. I did take philosophy in college. I remember some of the first chapters was in Greek, and some of the older philosophers, and Plato says it this way. I do find the wisdom in this. It says, wise men talk because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. I think as I'm kind of mentioning is that I would say, take stock of why you do what you do. A lot of times, at least from my experience, if my happiness is required to have external approval, or there's some sense of urgency that doesn't match the reality, or I just don't take time to kind of assess why, just why. It does feel that this problem that Plato has mentioned in his quote happens. You could feel it when you talk to a friend, a loved one, when they're just listening to say something else. I admit we're all, at least for me, I can speak for myself, we can be very bad listeners. I can be very bad listeners. And it's something that you constantly have to kind of work on. So I think, just like the previous Mark Twain, some of the uncomfortableness that I remember is knowing that the structure, the urgency, and what does that really say about where I'm at, how quote unquote successful, how quote unquote happy I am at. And I think those are, like, really, for me, one of the most solid steps forward to discovering what is next. Albert Einstein, also echoing what Plato says, is be a voice, not an echo. I guess what I take out of that quote is there's a lot of recorded, I guess, ideas. I know ideas may be piggybacked or you might be inspired, but even in the most inspiring people in my life, I try to reassess and how does it impact me? Because I think that internalization really makes whatever is said more meaningful. I use a lot of quotes in my podcast, and primarily for that, I guess, exercise of understanding things a little bit deeper. Yeah, people have said it better than me, but also prompts myself to think a little bit deeper, not just hear and understand things in a unique way, but actually understand things in a unique way within myself. The theme this month, again, is discovering what is next. And I feel it starts, I can say, at least from, it starts with you. What is next? Well, it's not what is next from what my loved ones think is what is next for me. And yeah, it can be, at least I've seen it, but at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to be journeying on that path. So I do encourage those who are listening, though life situations, environmental dynamics, cultural dynamics may be different, I do encourage you to find what is next, what is appropriate at a given time. And it may not be entirely ideal. And that is, I guess me saying that's okay, maybe not appropriate to say. But I guess the understanding that it's not finite from that I guess it comes to, and the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Well, understanding where you're at first before wanting to go anywhere else, I feel, is always a wise counsel, and I've been using a lot of Mark Twain quotes because I remember that I just like how he says it, especially in the context of what we're talking about today. It says, a man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. It sounds pretty rudimentary. It makes sense if you read it, but try to think about how it relates to you. So you cannot be comfortable without your own approval. If everyone else says, oh, you need to go this path, but you don't want to, or there's something holding you back, maybe that path is still good, but I would encourage to understand why it is. At least take a little bit of time, whatever is appropriate. But I do like what Mark Twain is boldly saying: a man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. No matter how great job is, how great this person is in your life, whatever it may be, if you yourself are not convinced, if you want to lose weight, you want to be better in your health, it has to start from you. That's what I gather from that. And a lot of times we may have that motivation. We may hear someone who speaks or someone who told you or kind of reminded you of the importance. Yulia says that this cautionary kind of advice, and said it doesn't matter how strong or well prepared you are. You may have notebooks, lists, everything ready if you have no direction. So the planning of it really does matter. Asking yourself why does matter. Don't my advice from my own, obviously everyone with their own context, but what I would encourage at the very least is not just to prepare, not just to be okay, I need it, but not generalize. Make it specific. Why do I want to lose weight? Well, because I'll be healthier. For me, that's not enough. Why do you want to be healthier? Well, because I'll look better. Well, still not enough. Why do you want to look better? Well, because I want to feel better. Okay. And why is feeling better? Sounds silly, but why is feeling better important? Well, because, we could go down that route. Well, because I want to be likable. Because I want to feel better in my own skin. I want to feel that I can do something. I've been having a hard time for so long. I want to be around for my grandkids' graduation. I want to be there for my daughter's wedding. I want to be there for several things, and it becomes more personal. It's not because I want to look better. No, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, why do you want to be healthier? Why do you want to feel better? Why do you want to be better? I think these questions may help you discover what is next. And my final thoughts are really take time to ask those questions. It's good to get wise counsel. I do encourage you to hear those who have been supportive, but at the end of the day, the accountability comes to you to make that choice. What do you want to do? It may be an unpopular choice, but if it's something that you want to do, I would at least encourage you to take time, not just be responsive, but take time to ask yourself why this is so important. And that will be my final thought. We had some incredible guests this month. There's still one more week left of this topic, so I encourage you to check that out. But also, if you want to be a guest, I just encourage you to just email me at info@reviveministriesfl.com. I want to say thank you for listening. A lot of times people's lives get busy. And at times I do like to have my own, do a little episode just with myself. Granted, I do like having, and I do appreciate every guest that comes on here. It's not easy to talk about these things. It's not easy to share. But if you want to be a guest, I do encourage you to email me. uh, at info. Uh, Hold on, I'll get the email 1 second. I want to give you the correct one. But yeah, if you are someone who's listening right now and you're like, well, I want to be a part of that, I encourage you to just write me an email, and we'll see about whether where we can fit you in. Okay, so we are sometimes our worst critics. We are sometimes, it's easy to, I can't. But no matter how much training you have, no matter how well prepared you are, at the end of the day, eventually you're just gonna have to do. So I'm gonna put the email right here is info@reviveministriesfl.com. I do encourage you to email me if you want to be a guest, if you have something to share. Also, I'm looking for any musicians who want to. I'm doing Music Monday. This is March, so we're having some here. We're also looking for other parts of the year. We have Music Monday in May, and also in September and December. Just email me to find out more, whether it's the right fit or something that you want to be a part of. I do encourage you on that. Remember to stay updated with all things Revive Ministry through the various platforms. ReviveMinistryFL.com is our website. I think this is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving you with this last quote. And it's from Martin Luther King Jr. It says, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward."